Hey Tribe, it's Cass. Today we are talking about domestic violence. I'm here with April and Trisha over here. So I know I've been in a situation involving domestic violence. Have you ladies been in a domestic violence situation before?
Yes.
What was first of all, how old were you guys? What was the ages that you guys were when you were involved in domestic violence?
I was in my 20s, actually, and I actually just had an incident with it a few months ago. Like, July was my most recent one.
Now, in your 20s, were you in a long-term relationship?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Okay, what about you?
I was 22, 23, and it was like a 4-year relationship.
Okay. So mine was about the same. I was probably like 22, 23, and I was in a long-term relationship with my oldest two kids' fathers. And I know for mine, it was a one-time thing, but I knew there were previous episodes of it in his previous relationship. But I've never been that person. Now, I know my mom had an issue with that. My sister had an issue with that. I've seen my aunts do it. I think one of the misconceptions is that it's mainly guys who do it to females.
Well, and I can attest because mine was both.
Right. So mine was a little bit of both because I do remember drawing a knife on him and trying to stab him. But that was mainly because he hit me first. I know my sister, hers was very severe. My mother's was pretty severe. And a lot of the misconception is that it's mainly men who hit women. And domestic violence is not just men who hit women. It's women who hit men. There are men who suffer from domestic violence in their relationships. And it's not just in a consensual husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend relationship. Your parents can be victims of or abusers, domestic violence abusers. They can be the reason why you're in a domestic violence relationship. They can beat on you. Your sisters or brothers. It can be anybody in your life. 9 times out of 10, most of the times, it is a family member. So I think that's a common misconception.
It's also a misconception that it's just physical, and it's not.
Correct.
Like, verbal abuse is terrible, and that's still a form of it as well. Emotional, too. So that's
Correct.
a huge misconception that people don't realize.
Right. So you said that yours was a 4 relationship. What made you stay through all of that?
Actually, I had 2 episodes with it. Like, I never knew what a healthy relationship looked like outside of, like, my aunts and uncles. And they're, like, old, so you just figure old people have healthy relationships because back in their day, like, things were different. They saw the world differently. So, like, my first relationship, he was emotionally abusive. So, like, if I would want to leave the room, or for example, he would stand in the doorway and tell me I could not leave the room. So if I tried to leave the room, like, he would push me back and he'd be like, if I tell the dog to get in the cage, the motherfucking dog will listen and get in the cage. So his mom actually told me it's okay, eventually you get used to it. So I was like, okay, well, that was a lot to think about. Like, my mom died when I was 10. I had a horrible relationship with my stepmom. I always say my dad checked out after my mom died. He used to cheat on her anyway and take my sister and I with him to cheat on her. So I couldn't go to him. I don't know. Like, I didn't know who you talk to. Like, so to me, it was normal. I didn't have a normal in-house example of what it looked like. Like, I heard my dad attempt to rape my mom. So that was all normal stuff to me. So I stayed because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. But then I would watch, like, Lifetime movies. Like, that would never be me. But it was me. So I stayed because of that. I thought you were supposed to. And then for his mom to tell me eventually you get used to it, it's like, well, I guess that's just what you're supposed to do. Yeah. And then my second case with it, that was a little worse. Like, he put a knife to my throat. He would take pieces off of my car. I would be in the middle of driving, and he would slam the car into a different gear and just, like, do all kind of stuff, all because I attempted to leave because he was cheating. So I felt like I had to stay because who wants to be with someone who has all this baggage? I had kids and I had multiple kids. So I stayed because I thought you were supposed to.
My abusive relationship was my youngest child's father. I grew up watching my father beat my mother, and I love my daddy. But watching and knowing what was going on in the house. I mean, us having to go to women's shelters, and then we go to a women's shelter, we're walking outside, and because my dad used to always wear these camo pants, my mom seeing somebody with a camo pair of pants on and getting terrified, and we having to run back into the building. So I always tell myself, one thing I would not do is ever let anybody hit me. I'll never go through a situation where I let anybody hit me. And if it ever got to that point, It used to be both of us boxing. I used to take Tina Turner as my example. If we walk down the street, if you hit me, I might look bad, but you're going to look bad too.
Right.
Well, with the relationship that I was in, I felt like it was the very first relationship that was a relationship. Now, don't get me wrong. My son's father, kind of like a relationship that I ended up finding out that he was married to somebody during the time. And my daughter's father, I don't even want to talk about. But he was probably more of a emotional, verbal abusive than abusive to me. But my youngest child's father, it was more of, he was the first one that I was head over heels, in my mind, head over heels in love with. So I was going to make it work. After my pregnancy with my youngest child, I went through a lot of physical issues. And with those physical issues, on one side, he was extremely, loving. I went through really bad case of eczema where my entire body was, really bumped up. And, to me, ugly. It was depressing. I had gained some weight. And to him, he always treated me like I was the most beautiful person in the world. Even to the point that he wouldn't want me to get out the car because he's like, I don't want nobody to look at you. And to me, that was more of endearment. He admired me. But then on the flip side, he was mean. He would do things, even during the pregnancy, he would do things he would just walk out because he knew that I depended on him as much. And not financially depended on, but mentally and physically, I depended on him as much as I did. And I think the first of and I could tell a story for days. I think the first of our abusive relationship was we were at his mother's house. So I had gotten into a situation where we didn't have a place to stay. And we were at his mother's house, and he was really, his friends would do smoke weed and drink and take pills, and he had did it with them. Well, their house was freezing cold. It was wintertime. I was back in the room. I didn't have anywhere else to stay. So I'm back in the room, pregnant, and I remember him keep busting out of the room for some reason, and he kept taunting me. So there was one point that I shut the door and I wouldn't let him get in. So I'm up against the door. He hits the door. He's hitting the door. I finally move away from the door because I'm thinking he can't get in. He hits the door so hard that it falls on me. Now, mind you, I'm pregnant. So I get the door off. Now I'm at the point that I'm over it. I said, I done promised myself I'm not going through this again, or I'm not going to go through this kind of thing. I watched my mother go through it. I'm not going through it. So I remember him coming in the room, and he was drunk, so he wasn't really all the way there anyway. I remember stripping his clothes off down to his boxers and his t-shirt. And it's not funny, but down to his boxers and his t-shirt. And I wouldn't let him leave the room. So he said if I was going to let him, he was going to leave out the window. Now, we're on the second floor. So he goes to get out the window, to go act pretending, because I knew he really was going to try to get out. He's going to go out the window, and I pushed him. I don't know what came over me.
It's not funny. It is so not funny.
It's not. I don't know what came over me, but it was I was over it. The turmoil, I guess, growing up of knowing what it could look like, and then you do watch all the movies, and then me, I'm convinced I'm not going through it. If we're going to go through it, and I'll love you through it, but we're just both going to be fighting. And it went from there to, it seemed like every week we were in a fight. And every week it was something, it was violent stuff. From throwing pitchers of glass at each other, banging each other's heads against, in the closet, the rack where the clothes were. It was extremely violent. The very last time, which is where I got to the point that said, is no more, I cannot be in a relationship like this, was pregnant with another child that I ended up, I didn't end up having, but, we got into a fight. We got into a terrible fight. And then with this terrible fight, now, anytime we would get into a fight, don't get me wrong, it was always terrible, but I never got to the point that I would hit him in the face, just because that was like a safety zone. This point, I got so mad that, I'm hitting him in the face. We're rolling around the house, boxing, everything. Got to a point that he got me down, and he's getting ready to punch me in the face. And my oldest two children, my oldest jumps on his back. The youngest drops on his leg, and they pull him just enough for me to hit him. That was my it. Because if he would have hurt them in the process of them feeling like they had to jump in and save me, I don't know what I would have done. So I ended up calling the cops on myself. Well, I ended up putting him down on the floor, and I ended up beating him with my head, which was terrible and very painful. And I ended up calling the cops on myself. I said, please come get him, because if you don't come get him, I'm gonna kill him, and that's really how I felt. If they didn't come get him, they would kill him. They came and got both of us, but that was my last. I would not even. I mean, before it was, I don't mind being in an abused relationship, but we're both gonna be abused if that's the case. To realizing, no, that's not healthy for me. That's not healthy for my kids. That's not healthy for the other person. So I refuse to be in another abusive relationship. I'd rather just not be in a relationship at all.
Right. Now I know in my situation. The first time, honestly, I don't even remember what we were arguing about. It was something, and I'm one of them people. If I feel myself getting to the point where I'm getting angry, and you're steady like following me around and like pushing that button, if I tell you to leave me alone, just leave me alone. Like walk away, give me space to calm down. Don't keep pushing and prodding. We were arguing about something. I don't remember what it was, but I was getting in the shower, and I'm like, just leave me alone. Like stop bothering me, stop following me, just leave me alone. And as I'm going to get in the shower. He just kept like walking up on me, even as I'm getting in the shower. Like he's and the shower's on, I'm pulling the shower curtain back. I don't have any clothes on. It's slippery in the bathtub, and so I go to get in, and he started walking up on me, and I'm slipping and sliding. So I like pushed him away from the shower, and I'm like, just leave me alone. So when I pushed him, he swung on me, and so my stepson was there. My daughter, she was probably like 2 or 3 at the time, so she probably won't even remember it. But my stepson still to this day will talk about it, and he's like 18, about to be 19. And he was still like, I remember that time that you and Dad got into that fight in the bathroom, and that hurts me more than anything because I know my mom went through it with my dad, but I don't remember it. So I was around the same age as my daughter was when it happened to me, and I don't remember that happening to my dad or between my parents with my dad. But my mom tells me stories about it. And she said it was kind of like a situation like yours where my dad had hit her and then all the kids were around her trying to like break them up. We were hanging on her, hanging on him, and he ended up cracking her jaw. But again, I don't remember it. So I know that was the first incident. And again, I knew he had these issues in his past relationship, and she fought him. And that was one of the reasons why they divorced, is because she was like, when it got to the point where my son was getting in the middle, I didn't want that to be something my son saw on the regular and thought that it was okay, which is why she left the marriage. We only had that one incident. And then later, we didn't have any for a while until after he cheated. He had fathered a child with somebody else. I saw the relationship. We were trying to work it out, but he was still like going behind my back, seeing this girl and was lying about it. And I got to the point where I was fed up. So it's like, okay, if you don't want to stop seeing her, or at least, we can work this out between the three of us instead of you guys going behind my back. I don't want to be in this anymore. So I started to see someone else. So when he found out that I was talking to someone else, he got angry one night and tried to take my cell phone from me. His mom was there. And he came and tried to take my cell phone. We're on the floor rustling around, and he's like kicking me in the stomach, trying to take my cell phone from me. So at this point, I'm like, I'm not finna keep doing this. You're the one who's been cheating on me. You followed the child with somebody else. You won't leave me alone. So now that you're kicking me, and mind you, his mom sat there, and I know his mom had issues with domestic violence. She sat there and didn't say anything. She didn't say, get off of her, stop kicking her. My daughter was in the house. She didn't try and stop it at all until I went and got the knife. So now when I'm trying to stab him, she's like, don't stab my son. So at this point, I'm like, bitch, you can get it too. You didn't have nothing to say when he was beating on me. But now that I'm finna kill him, now you want to jump in the middle. Both of y'all can die tonight. I don't know how my mom and my sisters dealt with it for as long as they did. But I'm kind of like you guys. Like, I watch Lifetime movies. I never wanted to be that person that allowed somebody to hit on me, especially when I didn't hit you. So when do you, I know you said that, once your kids got involved, you were like, I don't want this to be a part of my kids' lives. How did you hide it from your kids?
So I didn't actually. Like, the first time it happened, the first relationship it happened, my youngest daughter, it was my oldest 2 kids' dad. So he's Mexican, so they're already like aggressive in general, and the stereotype is they're aggressive. His family's aggressive, let me just say that. And so like I kind of figured it was just who he was, and I didn't have anybody I could go to and talk to like, is this normal? Or I didn't know what love is supposed to feel like. To me, it's like, well, if they love you, that's just what it is. So my youngest daughter, she was born in February. He and I broke up, I think, in August or September of that year. She wasn't even a year, but if like my brothers or a guy I knew would come close to me to even try to hug me, she would scream and cry. So that's when I was like, something's got to give. Like, this is not cool, because now she's afraid of men, and she's afraid of men being close to me. She wasn't even a year yet. So that's kind of when I really realized kids see more than what you realize they see. And my oldest daughter, she spent a lot of time with my aunt and uncle anyway, so a lot of times she wasn't home. So that helped with her. But I thought with my youngest, I mean, she's an infant, so it doesn't really matter. But it mattered. Like, it really mattered. And in my second relationship, it would be like he would take the kids. So, like, he would come in the middle of the night and he would take the kids. And I'm like, bring my kids home. He would not bring them back. So I actually learned a lot about the law with my second relationship, like what you can and what you can't do if you're married and you have kids together, just stuff like that. And then, like, when I would call the police, they would say, well, he's going to press charges and both of you are going to go to jail. So that was kind of a thing where I stopped calling the police. Like, he fractured my shoulder. Even now, I have, like, arthritis in my shoulder because he fractured my shoulder, and he did this in front of our kids. And at the time, our kids were, I had my oldest two kids, but they spent a lot of time with their dad. So it was my youngest two kids at the time, and they were like 1 and 2 around that time, and they were seeing all of this. Like, his mom would know about what was happening. She'd be like, I don't want to get in the middle of it. Like, how can you not want to get in the middle of what your son is doing? Mm-hmm. So even now, she'll be like, I remember the time when I heard you screaming help outside, and that's when I realized my son was really this person. So I guess I never really hid it from my kids. They don't remember it now. The incident I had a few months ago, they know about that. They're older now. They're like preteens, and my youngest is 5, so they know about that. They saw me come home with the bruises and stuff on my face, but the younger, like the incident a few years ago, they don't remember that. Thank God, because it was crazy. It was terrible, and I would hate for them to have that image of this is what love looks like, because it's not.
You know the crazy thing though? My oldest two remember, but my youngest, she doesn't remember the fight. But a few years later, she was 3 years old, he had came into town, and we got into a fight about something. And he had his stuff on my porch. I told him to get his stuff off. He wouldn't get it off. So I pushed his stuff off. He chases me. Now, it was by God's grace, because I had, usually my weapon of choice is a gun. So I always bring my gun with me if I'm going to go do something I know that might cause something. I couldn't find my gun, so I had my pepper spray. So I'm downstairs. I push his stuff off, then he chases me. And as he chases me into the door, I spray him. He kicks my door. Now, I'm standing, this is a full glass screen. So it wasn't just the half, but it was full glass. I'm standing here, Kizzy's standing right behind me. So it shattered further than this room can go. If that's the door, further than this room could go, it shattered. Hit me and her. She still, to this day, remembers. I remember a few years later, probably like 5 or 6 years old, because he got banned where he couldn't come back to Ohio. She asked him, she said, why did you kick the glass at Mommy? And he's like, what are you talking about? She's like, when you kicked the glass and it hit Mommy, why did you do it? And she was 3. I don't remember anything when I was 4. Right. But she still, to this day, remembers. She still will now bring it up, because my kids are so vocal. And I mean, I got to love them for it. And I try to give them enough independence. But she will ask in a heartbeat, like, why are you my dad? I don't understand why you're my dad, because you make promises, you don't keep them. You do things to hurt me, and you do things to hurt Mommy. So I hate that they had to see that image. And honestly, I get to points sometimes where I cry, because I don't want my kids to be bruised or damaged or broken because of the bullcrap that they've watched me go through, and not be able to be in a stable relationship or a healthy relationship and jumping around and not jumping around. I remember my dad told me one day, and I'm going to cut it, but told me one day, well, April, you shouldn't be in so many relationships. You're just dragging them kids to all this stuff, not realizing that, number one, I never saw what a healthy relationship looked like. All I seen was TV and the fairy tale of what the positive was supposed to look like. But number one, I didn't see how to work through the negative, didn't see how much negative it was supposed to be, so I don't know what it looks like. So, Dad, that was partially your fault, because that's what you showed me. Right. And I knew I wasn't going to settle for that. So instead, I hopped from person to person trying to find what the movie showed me it was supposed to be like. So, sorry, off topic.
What do you guys tell your kids about domestic violence? Because I remember Whoopi Goldberg, I made a comment on The View one time in regards to men hitting women. And she basically said, tell your daughter that it's not okay to hit men. And that's just because mainstream, it's usually men hitting women. And I have a son. And I also have 2 daughters. And I tell my daughter, I always use the example of, you don't jump into a lion's cage and then be mad when the lion bites you. That's their territory. you don't do that. And so I've always looked at men as protectors because, again, I didn't see my biological dad hit my mom. I knew he was on drugs. I knew he had hit her, but I didn't see that. My stepdad was a lot more mild-mannered. So even though I saw my aunts and uncles fight and hit my aunts and hit each other, really, because I don't know how many times my aunts would go outside my uncle's head with cast iron skillets, like they would fight. I didn't see that at home because my stepdad just was not that man. Honestly, even if he hadn't been in church, I don't think he would have been that man. He's just not that person. Like, he's more of a, I'll just sit here quietly and then I'll walk away, or I'll let you think whatever you want to think. But he's just not that guy. And I am grateful for that. So I didn't see it at home. But I still tell my daughter, like, men are supposed to be protectors. That's what I saw in my stepdad. They're supposed to be protectors and providers. You don't hit a man. You don't step into that lane of threatening their mindset of being protectors and providers, because then you're putting yourselves in the lion's cage to get hit back. So I tell my son, you don't hit a female first. If she hits you, you tell her to stop. You try and walk away. If she keeps hitting you and won't leave you alone, don't be mad at me. Then you hit her back. Not saying you got to punch her, black her eye, beat her till she's, unconscious, whatever, but you defend yourself.
You stop her. So I guess Kenny, my kid's father, the one that I get along with, he said he was in a situation, and he's just not a physical hit you kind of, and he's a big dude, but he's not a I'll hit you kind of person, hit a female kind of person. Heck, sometimes I can't get him to defend me when it comes to a male. But he was in a situation with a lady that he was dating, and she was a boxer. So he said that she just kept hitting him, and he said instead how he handled it is he after she got to a point that she just kept and he couldn't get her to stop, he hit her, but he hit her to stop her. So he didn't hit her in the face, didn't hit her in the chest, he hit her in the thigh for her to flinch a little bit, and then he could walk away. So there's a difference in hitting to hurt and saying, okay, well, I beat her up because she hit me first,
Right.
as opposed to hitting to save the situation or stop the situation. So, because no matter what, in 9 times out of 10, a man is always going to be stronger than a female. So it'll never be a fair fight, even if she's beating on you and you decide, okay, she didn't beat me like so much, now I'm going to beat her back. I don't think that's the right way. I feel like if she's beating you to a point, you stop her. I mean, whatever that entails, without the intent to hurt her. Because then that just makes you just as bad as her. I don't know, maybe I'm a little double-sided because I know I said I'm one of those. I've been one of those in the past where in order to prevent me from getting hurt, I fight to the I mean, it's just what it is. But at the same time, that's not healthy either. So, I mean, I guess the difference with women, and I hate to seem like it's a double standard, the difference with women, for a woman to stop a man because he is stronger than her, she has to fight hard because she's not as strong as he is.
Right.
But for a man to stop a woman, he doesn't have to beat her up to stop her.
Right.
I mean, unless he's like scrawny little and she's big tough, then okay, he may have to. But if it's a situation where he really doesn't have to, he just not hitting her because he doesn't want to hit her, then instead of making the approach that, okay, I'm just going to beat her up to stop her, I have her right because she hit me first, take a different approach. Stop her from hitting you. And then evaluate your relationship, because that probably isn't somebody you should be with if she feels like she should be hitting you all the time.
I've never had a conversation with my kids about domestic violence, honestly, until recently. Like, what happened with their dads, they didn't really remember it. Like, my daughter, I said she used to be afraid, so it took her years to be okay. Like, my brothers couldn't even hug me in front of her. So it took years to get past that. And when they did, I never mentioned it again. So when it happened a few months ago, I had to have a conversation with them. I try and keep my world away from them because I feel like kids should be kids. So whatever I go through should not fall onto their shoulders. So I dealt with it. And then, okay, so I got to tell the story. So he showed up at my house drunk. I'd broken up with him because he was controlling, and he never hit me, but he'd done stuff to indicate that he would kill me to keep somebody else from being with me. So we broke up. He showed up at my house drunk, and my thing was just getting him away from my kids. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take you home. He wouldn't get out the car. Long story short, he started beating the mess out of me. He choked me to a point where I couldn't see anything. Like, I had scars in my mouth from him shoving his fingers down my throat. I still have a scar on my neck from him choking me so bad, and this happened in July. So, of course, my kids were out of school. I came home. They saw my face was swollen and bruised and the marks on my neck. they're like, what happened? They saw him at the house and they knew he was leaving. So I had to use that as a moment to talk to them, just to tell them, like, guys don't hit women. And I also made sure they knew that I'd done nothing to provoke this attack, because I think that's important too, that it's not okay for him to hit me. However, if I initiated this attack, he has every right to beat my ass if I'm starting it. So I made sure they knew that I'd done nothing to start it, but I also told them men don't hit women, period. I don't care how upset you are at something she said. If she doesn't put her hands on you, you don't touch her. So my sons are 9 and 5. My 9-year-old son, like, when we would go somewhere, he wouldn't get out of the car. If I would sit in the car, if we were with someone else, he's like, I have to stay here and protect you. I'm like, you don't have to protect mommy. Like, that's my job. So my 5-year-old, I probably shouldn't say this, but he asked if he could kill him. He was like, can I kill him? And I'm like, oh my God. So we had a conversation about, like, you can't kill people, but to know, like, he's 5. He just turned 5. His birthday was July 10th. This happened July 3rd. So he just turned, or about to be 5, and he understands to protect women. So, like, even my sons and my daughters, they play fight and they wrestle. And I tell my sons all the time, you can play, but you never hit them in their face, ever. And I try not to let them play as far as, like, hitting, because I don't want them to grow up and be the type where, like, they're hitting their girlfriends and they think it's playing, but their girlfriends have been in a situation where it's not playing because they've experienced it or they've seen it. Like, it's a lot of variables that go into teaching your kids domestic violence is not okay.
So I have a question. And just because you talking about that made me thinking about it. So we all have sons. So say we get to a point that our sons are older, and it's not going to happen. But if we ever encountered a situation where our child was doing something similar, how would you handle it? Because we have all talked about, people who watched it happen, mothers of the domestic partner, watching it. So in a situation that you're the mother watching your son, how would you handle it?
Honestly, I would probably be the one to be fighting my son. And I tell my kids, like, I don't care how old you get, you'll never be able to beat my behind. And that's not so much as I'll always be able to beat you up and, I'm stronger than you, whatever. But right is right and wrong is wrong. I will never be one of those parents because I've seen it. When my sister went through it, and this is one of the reasons why, I don't care what your title is. If you're wrong, you're wrong. My sister's ex, his mom is a pastor, or she's really into the church. He has position at her church. But when my sister was going through it, she always go, well, you know how he is. Don't call the police. Don't press charges. He won't be able to see his son. And she made excuses for her son all the time. That irritates me. Like, I don't care what your position is. If you know your son is abusing somebody, how can you sit by and make excuses and tell this woman, like, well, just deal with it, or, well, don't do this and he won't do it again. I will never make excuses for my son to abuse another woman. I don't care if she's not hitting you. And that's why I wanted to ask the question. I'll let you answer first, but I want to ask the question, do you think this is hereditary? Because I feel like people who see it do it. Some don't, some do. People who see it either do it or they tolerate it. My son has never seen it.
Well, my brother's seen it, I believe. And y'all know my brother, he is not going to hit no female.
Right.
Like, he's just not his personality. And yeah, he's way more aggressive now than he was when he was younger. But I'm saying as a person, so he's not like as soft-spoken. But he doesn't have that. But, and he knows. I mean, he's been in situations with my dad on drugs, down in the basement doing stuff that he had no business doing in front of him. And he's still, like, that's just not his personality.
Right.
Like, unless I've seen it with my own eyes, I would never believe that he would hit anybody. I mean, even to the point my dad used to, and I love my father. That's my favorite. I mean, that's my heart. But my dad used to, I remember seeing a time when my brother, we were in the living room at my grandmother's house, and he took my brother by the neck and threw him across the room. Mm-hmm. My sister, she got mad at my sister one time and hit her against the wall and choked her. Never really hit me that bad. It was one time he did, and we fought. Like I said, me and him even fought. Like, I never hit me and my mom never got into a fight, like as far as a physical fight. But my dad, because I knew his temper, when he finally got at the point that he felt like he was going to hit me anyway, other than just a regular whooping, like we fought. But But that being the case, my brother has not only watched it happen to my mother, he's watched it happen to other females with my dad. He's watched it happen to himself, my sister. He wasn't there when mine happened. And I could never see, and not saying just because I could never see it that that's the case, but I would definitely have to see it because his personality is nothing like my dad's personality. Like, he's just not that. So I don't think it's hereditary. I don't think just because you see it. I feel like in every situation, there's two different types of people. There's people who go through stuff, and because they go through it, they figure that they have to reenact it and put other people through it. Then you have people who go through stuff, and because they went through it, they want to change it and make it completely opposite. So I don't think it's hereditary. I think it's really just dependent on the person.
I probably shouldn't have said hereditary. What I probably meant to say was a generational curse, because like you said, there are some people who see it and want to go the complete opposite, and some people who see it and use that as a crutch to say, well, this is what I saw, this is what I'm used to, so let me just go ahead and do it because people will understand that I don't know any better. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's true at all. In a lot of instances. I mean, I've seen people who were like, I saw my parents do drugs and, this, that, and the other. And, I saw my dad cheat on my mom. So this is why I'm like that. You can choose to make a different decision. You always have a choice. Mm-hmm. And that's why I said I will never stand by and make it okay for my son to hit a woman for no reason. Ever. I can't see that happening.
I agree. I don't think it's hereditary or I think you're more likely to reenact situations you see as a child because you grow up thinking it's normal. However, as an adult, you should be wise enough to make your own decisions. But I think that's it's another subject for a different day, but that goes toward your mental health. It's important to be mentally healthy. So if I know I'm having these feelings where if I see a woman put on, my ex, for example, the one who I had the issue with a few months ago, he has a horrible relationship with his mom. She used to wear red lipstick. So if I wear red lipstick, it triggered something in him. His demeanor, everything toward me that day would be so different because he thought about how his mom treated him, all because I wore red lipstick that day. So I would tell him, you need to seek a counselor. Somebody can help you with that. So if you have these experiences that are not healthy when you're younger, there is help for that. So you can break that pattern. I don't care if you saw every single man your mother's ever dated beat women, or your pastor at the church beat women. I don't care who you saw do it. At some point you still realize, okay, it's not okay because all men aren't doing this. If it was okay, I'm not going to go to jail for doing it. If it was okay, it wouldn't be a stigma attached to doing it. Common sense, and I know common sense is not so common these days, but at some point you just realize it's not right, regardless of how angry I get. Me, when my adrenaline starts rushing, I don't think the way I should think all the time, but even in that moment, I still know right is right and wrong is wrong.
I guess another thing is education. So back in the day, when stuff like this happened, it was hidden a lot.
Yeah.
So even if children happened to see it, nobody ever talked about it. So they grew up with this, with this vision and, going through this experience, but they never knew where to place the feeling. So, of course, when you get older, it's natural to think, okay, well, it was okay then, so it's okay now. Or I have all this pent-up anger, so I'm going to take it out the way that I know from what I see. I think the difference is going to be the communication. I feel like it's important to communicate with your children. If your children have seen it, or if you have any kind of inkling that they have noticed or know anything about your domestic violence situation or anything that's happened to you, I think it's important to communicate. I honestly even think even if they haven't seen it, once they get to a certain age, communicate it with them, because I think that's what breaks the cycle. So for young boys, especially young boys that love their mothers, a lot of times boys are mama's boys. Seeing their father do it is one thing, but I think understanding how their mother feels is another thing. But if you hide your feelings and you try to make it look like it's a perfect picture, then that's why they perfectly think it's okay. I feel like if you communicate with them, our kids are way smarter than we try to put them out to be. And really, as much as we try to hide, it's not being hidden. So instead of continuing to try to hide it, there's got to be a point where we learn to communicate. Because if we don't communicate it, either their own emotions or mentor will communicate it, however they want to take it, or somebody else will communicate it, even if it's a friend who says it's okay, or, whatever. I feel like everything that we talk about needs to come from our parents, or needs to come from us as the parents. So if we went through something, then we need to sit down with our children and be like, hey, this is what, and this is what is, and this is what isn't. Because I feel like their love for their parent is going to shade the way. So instead of them growing up like, oh, I saw daddy do it, it was a perfect household, so it's okay, they're going to go in, I saw daddy do it, I know how to make my mother feel, I'll never lay my hand on a female kind of situation. Doesn't mean that's how it's always going to be, but I feel like that would definitely help. And then it helps with the mental part, with the mental health, because it's not mentally healthy to see something and not know where to place those feelings.
Right.
At least if you can communicate, then it allows them to communicate back with you, because now they know how you feel, and then you allow them to tell you how they feel about it. And that, not saying it's a cure, but it definitely helps.
Yeah.
But I think I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Even with the communication, like, it goes hand in hand with actions, because if you're seeing your father beat me up, and then when your father's not around, I'm telling you, this is how it makes me feel, or I cry because I don't want him to do this. But then he comes home and he beats me again, and I'm having this conversation with you again. It's not going to add up in the mind of a child, because you're telling me this one thing, but I'm seeing this. So what you're telling me is not lining up with what you're telling me I should feel, because you staying is telling me that it's okay. Then I think that creates a cycle of them believing that it's okay to lie, because now you look like a liar, because you're telling me it makes you feel this way, but you're staying. So,
Or if nothing else, that it's okay. It is not okay, but you guys should stick through it.
yeah.
Right.
So I definitely don't think you should. I mean, nobody should stay through it anyway. So I definitely think it needs to be something that when you're talking to them, you're already finding a way out. Or getting out. I do understand that sometimes domestic violence can be very difficult to get out, whether it's you really want to, but you can't. It's hard to find the way out.
Emotionally, it's hard.
Emotionally, sometimes you don't have the means, or you're afraid to have to do it by yourself because you don't have the help. And his paycheck helps make the household, together for whatever reason. Or may have threatened you, and he's threatening your life, or he's threatening your family, he's threatening the kids, whatever. But you got to think is even in that situation, it's already a threat anyway. So you have to find some kind of way. I mean, whether it's a hotline, I hate the whole police thing. Just because I've been through the whole police thing, and, they'll go through if he has mail here, he lives here, or I can't kick him out because this is his house too, or I can't, and it's just like, okay, so I'll just get beat again.
Yeah.
So, but there's got to be a way. I mean, I've never really had to go through the hotlines, but there's definitely got to be something that helps before you have to get so badly hurt that, I don't know. It's frustrating. Sorry.
No, you're fine. It is very frustrating because I feel like a lot of times the police don't take it seriously until somebody is in the hospital or dead, and it shouldn't be that way, because I understand the mindset of why women are like, well, nobody's going to help me, because they don't take it serious when it's just, oh, he's hitting me. It's, I can't make him leave, work out amongst yourselves, not realizing the courage that it probably took for you to even build up to call them and seek that help.
And then when they leave, I'm going to get beat again.
Exactly. So I want to ask you this, because you said that you haven't really talked to your kids about it, even though the last one was in July and you're not with him anymore. Now that you're not with him, why haven't you still talked to them about it?
We talked about it after it happened. Like, it was important for them to know what happened. And they needed to know what happened, because I tell them all the time, I don't care what anybody else does or says, I'm always going to be the most consistent person in your life, period. And then my goal, I tell everybody, my goal is to raise kids that don't require Iyanla to fix the damage I've done. So it was important for me. It was embarrassing. It was hurtful, because they knew this guy. They knew he and I were supposed to be married this past June. Like, he called me queen. He, opened the doors for us. He made sure my sons opened the door. Like, he was this perfect guy. So for them to know he did it, my daughter was actually really close with him. So when she saw him at the house, she was happy. She asked if it was her fault that he did it, because she was happy he was there. So my son actually asked me, he said, why did he hit you? And he always tells us men don't hit girls. My son was 8 at the time. So this guy is telling him guys don't hit girls, but he hit his mom.
Right.
So we had to have this conversation. It was hard, but like I have transparent conversations. Like my youngest son is 5. He can tell you the difference in a pad and a panty liner. Like I feel like it's important to me because when they grow up, like everybody's not going to tell them the truth. So they have to hear it from me. So I told them I had to tell their fathers about it. And it was hard to tell their fathers because they'd beaten me before. So obviously now they don't. And they're not those men. We were all young. That doesn't excuse it. But we've all grown and matured. And they wanted to kill him. Like they were upset with me because I wouldn't give them his information. And I'm like, I can't because I have to make sure my kids know that there's a process you have to follow. So I can't let y'all kill him. Then y'all are in jail for defending me. Like, it's just a lot of variables that went into it. So I did have a conversation with my kids to make sure they knew it was not okay. I am going to take action. I'm not going to sit back and just, well, he's gone now. And no, like, you have to know there are consequences for these actions. You better not ever put your hands on a woman. You better not ever let a man put his hands on you and think it's okay. So they had to know that I was strong enough to go forward with the consequences that happen. So God forbid it happens to them. If it happens to them, they'll know, well, my mom went through this. My mom was brave enough. I can talk to her. I never want them to feel like they're in a position, something that serious. People die all the time from domestic violence. A lady in Dayton just died yesterday because her boyfriend killed her. They have to know if you're in this situation, I can talk to this person. They've been through this. These are the channels we can go through. So in the past, I hadn't spoken to them about it because they were younger. Now they're older and they're at a point where they will remember it. They will know it. Like even now, still, they see the mark on my neck from when he choked me. And they're still like, I hate to see that on your neck. And I always tell them, I hate to see it too. But it's a reminder to us that mommy was strong enough to do the right thing. So, yeah, we had that conversation. It sucks, but I would rather have that conversation with them now and instill it in them now than for them to grow up like, well, my mama went through it and it was cool. It's not okay, like, period, ever.
Well, I think, April, you made a good point earlier when you talked about education because the difference between our generation and our parents' generation is, like you said, back then it was swept up under the rug. It was you didn't hear nothing, you didn't see nothing, don't tell nobody what happened in my house. And they didn't really talk about it with you. Versus our generation, and this is my opinion, I believe a lot of parents nowadays leave it up to the school system to educate our children instead of having those honest conversations with them. The problem is, which I know your daughter does, my daughter does, I don't think yours might be old enough, our daughters have social media. And my daughter's on Facebook, so she sees the videos that are getting shared. She's on my friends list, and I share some of the videos and stuff as an educational thing, but also because I've been through it. So I have to have, like you said, these transparent conversations with my 13-year-old because I want her to be aware of the dangers in the world. I don't want her to be that naive to think, oh, it'll never happen to me. I mean, I don't care what nobody says. I mean, I grew up in church. I have all the faith in the world. I don't believe the dangers of the world are never going to happen to my children just because I have faith or I grew up in church. So I want my children to be proactive and be prepared and understand what's right and what's wrong, and how relationships should be and how you should be treated, how you should treat other people. I always tell my kids, I want to prepare you guys for the possibility that one day I might not be here. And there's nothing funny about domestic violence. And we were laughing about it earlier. It's not funny, but we know each other. We all grew up together.
And then remember, I laugh through my pain. So sometimes it's easier for me to laugh. Honestly, and it's not, this is probably not healthy. So, but this is we're being transparent.
Mental health.
my kids will seriously be like, Mom, I remember that time you threw this at Daddy's head, and laugh about it. My mom's crazy. And it's definitely not funny. Man, I need some help.
We all need help.
Oh my gosh! But I seriously do. I laugh through my pain. Like I'm not. I always have been taught, and it's really self-taught. But part of it is from watching my mother that I have to be strong.
Yeah. So
with the thought of I have to be strong, somebody's not always going to be there for you. You know, you have to be strong enough to handle it. To sometimes realizing that, man, like handling it is not always easy. Yeah. But. I don't know, having to hide it. I can't let my kids see that I'm weak. So if it means laughing through it, as long as they understand that the laughter is not because it's funny, It's more of, it's the past, it's over, we laugh, we learn, and we live, and we keep moving. So yeah, it's definitely not funny.
Right. But education is important, though, because, again, we don't want our children to be naive to think that these things won't happen to them. But at the same time, we want them to understand that it's not okay if it does. Nobody should be putting their hands on you. Nobody should be hitting you, especially for no reason if you're not hitting them. I don't care how angry you get. If you're that insecure, don't be with that person. Which brings me to my last question, because I don't want us to stay on this all night. But did you guys see any warning signs? Like, I know, I knew that my ex had an issue with domestic violence, but I also had talked to his ex-wife. As a matter of fact, his ex-wife and I actually now are like the best of friends. Like, we talk all the time. I'm very close to her and my stepson, and he is not really in the picture for any of the kids anymore, but her and I are very close. So we've had candid conversations about it, and she's like, there were times where he instigated it. There were times when I was having a mood and I instigated, and I just went off on him because of something he did, and he was, cheating on her. So, I mean, not saying that cheating will make you want to hit somebody, but when it's kind of habitual, when he's always cheating and always introducing new females, you might want to hit him upside the head. It wasn't okay, but it's just the way it happened. So I knew that about their relationship was that they had fought each other, which I think is the reason why I didn't think he would ever do it to me, because it's like, I'll never intentionally give you a reason to want to hit me. I can be a bitch sometimes. I might say some stuff like be slick at the mouth, but I don't think that's a reason for you to go upside my head because of it. I'm not like being disrespectful to that level where you're like, I got to punch her in the mouth because, she talking fly. I'll never get to that point. So I knew about it, but I just didn't think he would do it to me because I wasn't that person to push those buttons to take you there. So did you guys have knowledge of that behavior before you got involved with these people?
I didn't have the knowledge. In my case, like, I was the first for all of them, except my last one. Like, he and his ex had a domestic violence issue, but he kept saying she initiated it. She hit me first, so I would push her to get her off of me. So he also legally changed his name. So when I had to call the police after everything happened, I was like, well, they said they couldn't find a record of him. I said, well, he changed his name. And they pulled it up. There was a long rap sheet of stuff he'd done, and it was much more than her just pushing him. Like, dude was legit nuts. So with my other two, like, I have children with two men, and my first two domestic violence relationships were with those men. So I was the first in both of those, and they always told me, like, you're the only one I've ever loved this much. So the things I do, I get so upset because I love you so much. I've never loved anybody this much. So for me, it was like, oh, okay, so this is cute because he loves me this much that he'll beat my ass. So I guess it's okay. So there were red flags. Like, looking back, I saw it start escalating, but there was never a history to reference. So
mine, I didn't know him well enough. It was a rushed relationship. I didn't really see signs. I guess the signs started with the drugs. So as he took or did certain things, he would get angry. And then when he wasn't on drugs, actually, you know what? There was a sign. But I didn't think of it as a sign. There was one time I was getting out the car, and somebody, the next door neighbors, was cutting the grass. And I had told the guy to come here. It was a Mexican guy. I told him to come here, and I was asking him rates because we had just moved into this house. So I was asking him rates to cut our grass. And out of nowhere, he came and he hit him in the face because he thought that we were talking. So that probably should have been my sign. But I didn't really take that as a sign. That probably should have been my sign. I guess there probably was signs, and I just really wasn't paying attention. So, and then I think at the time, a healthy relationship is thug love. As they call it. Because that's what, back then, and I still have a niece right now who does it. She'll sit up and get on social media talking about her boo and how they do all this different kind of stuff, or her mini boos that she be having. And it's like, it's cute to be in an argument. It's not. Like, it's not cute to be in an argument. It's not cute to have to bicker all the time. At some point, you'll get old enough, I pray, get old enough to realize that stuff's not cute. And if you start that cycle at a young age, that's kind of what you get. It progresses.
Yeah, it's stressful more than anything. We talked about it the last time about how there's an age difference between me and my ex. Now there's age difference between me and my husband. And I want peace more than anything. So no amount of arguing, it's not cute. The fussing and fighting over stupid stuff, the insecurity, like, it's not cute at all. I just want to come home and be at peace. And if we got to fuss and fight and argue all the time, whether it be minor stuff or big stuff, and we can't communicate peacefully, I would just rather not do it. Because that's another thing is, even like you said, domestic violence doesn't have to be physical. It can be verbal. It can be emotional. So if you're tearing each other down all the time, like my ex, one of his biggest things is he knew I had. I mean, he was my first relationship. I got with him when I was 18, fresh out of high school, and I was with him till I was like 23, 24, somewhere in there, like early 20s. And everything I knew about adult relationship outside of seeing my parents, I learned with him. We had our first show. Well, it was my first child, his second, but I had my first child with him. I moved into my first apartment with him, got my first car with him, start paying bills with him. Everything I knew about being an adult and being in a relationship, I learned with him. So when it came time for the end, I'm like, well, how am I going to adjust to being single and trying to date again and, raise 1.5, because I was pregnant when I left him with Shane. It's like, how do I adjust to trying to do all this stuff and being an adult without my other half, like without that person that I've been doing all this with? So then came the emotional of, even though once again he had cheated and had somebody else who was pregnant, right, like literally our sons are 6 months apart. And that's when I finally decided, like, I'm not doing this anymore, because clearly you haven't learned, you haven't changed, and I'll be 5 kids in deep and you'll have 7 other kids by other women, because every time I get pregnant, you seem to cheat and get somebody else pregnant. So it was kind of like, then came the emotional of, well, nobody's going to want you. You're not going to find anybody else like me to love you like I did, and nobody's going to put up with you because you got kids and you got baggage and this, that, and the other. So then I had to do some work on myself and get out of that mindset of nobody's going to want you. You're not good enough. Nobody's going to love you. Nobody's going to help you with those kids. You're going to be struggling and be on welfare and this, that, and the other. I had to get out of that mindset of believing everything he said, because it went from the one time we were physical to then it became verbal and emotional. To even after, like the weekend he got married, and I probably shouldn't say this, but they ain't married no more. But the weekend he got married, he called me and said, I made a mistake. I should have never left you for her. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. But at this point, I'm already beginning the process of healing and moving away from that, because from the time that I left, he was supposedly so happy with her, but it was still every other day, nobody's going to love you. You're ugly. You're fat. Our kids are going to come live with me. I'm going to take the kids away from you. Like, it was just constant, emotional, like just tearing me down. And it took so long for me to get out of that mindset of believing it, to getting to a point where it's like, you know what? You're not even a factor anymore. I don't have to listen to this. I don't have to deal with this. There's no weight in what you say. And I literally had to cut him off for a long time. I know, how do you still function with your kids' father? Because I think that they're pretty active in their kids' lives.
Yeah.
Right?
So with my first kid's dad, we had to learn actually with both of them, we had to learn to be friends. So the first one, we broke up. Our relationship was so toxic, I guess, from the emotional and the verbal abuse, that my daughter, the one who would cry if a man would come near me, she'll be 12 in February. Even now, she doesn't like him. And I hate to say she doesn't like him, but she doesn't like him. So if he and I are sitting in the room together and something's wrong with her bike, for example, she knows I'm going to ask him to fix it. She'll say, Mommy, will you fix my bike? And he's sitting right there. So if he's in the room, she'll walk right past him to say, good night, Mommy. I'm like, you're not going to tell your dad? Like, now it's a joke. We joke about it and we laugh about her not liking him. But it was so bad when I was pregnant, I guess, and her being younger, like, she still does not mess with dudes. So, like, she knows if something happens, he'll come to her aid or whatever. But we had to learn to be friends, because after we broke up and he saw I was serious, he wouldn't help me take care of them. He wouldn't do anything for them. Like, if I needed something, he just flat out would not do it. It's like he got off on knowing I needed him. Like, with you, he was my first everything, my first car, my first apartment. My home life was terrible growing up after my mom died. So he was like my savior, I guess, for lack of better words. Like, if my sister and I needed something, he would buy it. He was like a year or two older than me, so he would buy it. He made sure we had stuff, like simple stuff like pads. My dad and my stepmom wouldn't buy that. So I would be walking around all day with the same pad on if I didn't get it from school. He would buy stuff like that. So when we broke up, like, it was hard, but we learned to be friends. So now it's been 11, 12 years later, he's my best friend now. So when something happens, if I go on a date, for example, he's like, all right, call me, let me know when you get back in, or let me know the guy's license plate number, or if I even look like I've been crying and I'm in a relationship. Like, he's that guy I go to now. So I joke all the time and say I love him the way I'm supposed to love my dad. because he just takes care of me. And even with like my youngest kid, that we had to learn to be friends because you're the cause of all my hurt. Like everything I feel relationship wise or whatever outside of what I saw is a result of what y'all did to me. So now I feel like their protection over me is a part of their guilt. Like even now with my shoulder, my youngest kid dad fractured my shoulder because I wouldn't spend the night with him. So that was nuts. And that was my first experience with like going to the women's shelters and going underground and stuff like that. But now they feel guilty about it, and we can talk about it. We have conversations about it away from the kids, but it took time. It took a lot of time in me figuring out that I was worth more than what I was getting from them.
Have you forgiven them?
Yeah, I had to forgive them, honestly. Like, I had to forgive them. I always say forgiveness is not for them. Like, I forgive completely, not because you deserve my forgiveness, but because I deserve the freedom that comes along with forgiving you. So I forgave them, and it took me learning who I was and what I deserved and what I didn't deserve to be able to forgive them. Otherwise, every time I saw them, I thought about different ways I wanted to kill them, like watching Snapped and ID and stuff like that. Like, right. I was like, I can legit do this and I'll be good. So it took a lot.
And actually, that's one of the reasons why I've been posting stuff like that on my Instagram, is because a lot of people don't know who they can go to. They don't feel like they have anybody to reach out to. Like, I know my sister went through it. She didn't tell us about it at first. And so then when we found out, it was like, why didn't you talk to me? Like, we could have done something to help you. But even when we initially tried to help her, it was like she would call and say, okay, he's hit me again, I want to leave. And then by the time we got there, she's like, okay, you guys leave. Don't come in this house. Don't do this. Don't do that. I'll just figure it out. And even though we had told her, like, we're here if you need us, she still felt that pull to try and protect him and save him until she finally had enough. A lot of people just don't know who they can go to. And I think that sucks, because I don't think anybody should be out here going through that by themselves and suffering alone. Because you already feel alone enough when you're in the moment. Like, even though I knew if I would have called my mom, she would have came and helped me, I've never been that person to be like, Mom, I need your help, come get me. Yeah. I always was like, I'll be strong, I'll figure it out on my own. But with other people, I'm like, why don't you call me? Like, why don't you come to me? So I want to be that strong person, but I don't know how to be that weak person to say, okay, come and help me.
Yeah, and
but I want to be that person for other people.
If you don't know what a healthy love is supposed to look like, even if you call me and say, okay, like, I need you to come and get me, as I'm thinking, waiting on you to get there, for me, that was always the hardest part. Like, if I did call somebody to come and get me, I still have 10, 15, 20 minutes to sit and think about how I feel about this person until you get there. So by the time you're knocking on my door, I'm thinking about how much I love them and the good times we just had yesterday and the way they make me feel when we're making love. And like all of that goes into it. So for me, I learned, like, when someone calls me and says, I need help, or strangers who tell me their stories who don't know I've been through this. And I'm like, okay, God, why are you sending these people to me? Like, I don't want to talk to, send them to somebody else. So I'll give them my number. And if they call, like, I just need someone to come and get me because he's hitting me. Okay, but we're not hanging up. So we stay on the phone. So by the time I get to the door, you haven't had time to sit and think about how good it was yesterday, or how good it's going to be tomorrow when he calms down, or that it's not his fault because he says he's sorry. Like, I think it's important, if you're going to be that help for someone, you have to be strong enough to understand that they might change their mind. They might.
And with them change their mind, to still keep going.
Right.
Because, I mean, unfortunately, no one's going to, I mean, you can't make them walk away. They have to have enough.
And you have to keep your frustration to yourself about it, because you telling them that you're frustrated, that they called you, and now I wasted my gas to come all the way over here, or what did you call me for? And like my brothers, they would come every single time. Like my sister was in an abusive relationship. They would come every single time. And then you have to also know the difference in tough love for that person. Like, you can't just be like, well, you're just going to go back to him tomorrow. So you can't say that to somebody who's still struggling to leave. But you also have to know the difference in, am I coming to save you every single time? Or am I now telling you, don't call me until you're actually ready to leave? Like, it's a fine line you have to really understand and know the difference, but that comes from being, I hate to say a good person, but being a good person, because it matters. Like, I can't save you every single time if you're not ready to go, but I have to be there to let you know I'll be there every single time, even if you're not ready to go. It's a fine line, and it's crazy.
Have you forgiven?
I would like to say yes. I mean, he'll call every now and then and talk to our child. And I even tell both of my children, my oldest and my youngest, that, you know, for them, because I think they're struggling to forgive, I tell them all the time, like, you have to forgive them for you. Like, you can't hold on to it because it's not healthy. I mean, so, I mean, do I think about it? No. Am I mean to them because of it? No. Have I gotten apologies? No. Am I asking for them? No. So, I mean, I guess I really don't. I guess in a sense I have. I'm not carrying it to any other relationship. I feel like really this relationship that I'm in now has helped me to forgive a lot of people in a lot of situations, not just relationships, but even people in general. Because again, in my vision of love, I mean, I used to hate the word. So finally seeing what it looks like, and it's still shocking to me sometimes, is I think what really that thought of forgiving and forgetting, and really actually forgetting, and not necessarily forgetting like I don't know what happened, but more forgetting like I really don't care anymore. So I would say yeah, I would say I've forgiven.
I can't 100% say I've forgiven either. I'm kind of like you. I don't think about it. I don't dwell on it. I'm more at what I feel is a healthy place of I don't give it any power anymore. I'm kind of at a place where I know who you are. I know what your cycle is. And if I'm being 100% honest, my biggest issue would be I feel like this was a choice he made because I know this man. We've sat and had deep conversations about his faith, about the things that he know, like, you know, both his parents, he says, are bipolar schizophrenic. He's like, I see my parents make choices and do things and live this life and do drugs and alcohol, and I never want to be that person. I want to be the better parent than both of them were. I never want to hurt my kids, abandon my kids. Like, I just want so much better. I'm choosing to be different. So for me, it's like when you can verbalize and tell me I want to make a choice to be different than what I saw, and then you turn around and do exactly what you saw. It's like you took the easy road, like you copped out and did what you saw because you thought people were going to make the same excuses for you that they did for your parents. So now I can't look at you the same way because I know you know better. I know you can make a different choice. You're just choosing not to. So honestly, for me, that's what helped me to be able to let go. Be like, you know what? This is your choice. You live with it. I'm not participating anymore. I don't hate you. I haven't 100% forgiven you, but I'm going to let you live with your choice. I'm just not going to be a part of it anymore. Domestic violence, emotional abuse, all that stuff, it really affects not just your physical, but your mental, your spiritual. And that's why, again, education, especially to our kids, is important. We are going to have a discussion about mental health because I think it's something that gets swept up under the rug, especially in the Black community. It gets swept up under the rug so often and overlooked, and people don't deal with it and heal from it properly. Let me preaching to the choir, and I just said I heal from it, but I think it is something that people need to take into account and get help for. Because these situations, they affect you on every level, and those scars do not heal easily. So I think that's a good note to end this conversation on because we have to get into another topic. But yeah, comment below and keep this conversation going because I think it's a very important one, and especially have these important conversations with your kids because it does matter, and kids see and hear and understand more than we give them credit for. Hey guys, it's Cass. If you like my video, remember to leave your comments below. I will respond to comments, but please subscribe, share this video, and keep the conversation going with your friends. And also click the little bell so you get notifications when I post more content.